Welcome to part two in my series about the NCOV 2019 virus. I've changed my shirt because I went on a walk, and this is the same day that I made the other one. And I got soaked because it's winter here again. I think I'm going to talk about the social isolation and distancing thing. Because I think even if I can get through to a couple of people about how important this is and why it's important, it's going to make a difference because there's a ripple effect. And knowledge can also grow exponentially or spread exponentially through a population, not just viruses. So the virus is seemingly behaving epidemiologically in an exponential way. It is the number of infected cases, for example, as we saw at the beginning of this mess in China, the number was growing exponentially, which means if you have a graph, time to take out the paper. Okay, so anytime you draw a graph, the most important thing, and most postdoc level people who give presentations don't even know this, the most important thing to do is assign value to your axes. So when you're talking about number of infected cases, you have your x-axis here. This is upside down for me, so I hope I'm doing this right. And your y-axis here. And this is 0, so that's the 0 value for either your x value or your y value. So your x values are going to be time. This is going to be t in days, or whatever. You can do hours too, but that's a little harder to collect that data. Is that right? Doesn't look good. Anyway. This is time, so you have days. Each day, you have a data point. And the data point, representative of each day, is going to be the number of people that's infected. So this is the number of infs. Okay? So an exponential curve looks like this. Oops, I crossed the axis here. So it starts out slow, slow, slow. So what that means is for the first few days, in this example, the number of infected people doesn't change so much. But then at some point, some biological or epidemiological threshold is crossed, and all of a sudden, we're seeing the number of infected people in the same time frame becoming much larger. So that gives you this, how do you do an E in this? E, exponential growth curve. So it gives you this exponential growth curve. Okay, this is related. Wow, my writing is horrible. This is related to this thing that a lot of people are throwing around, or were throwing around, or relevant to epidemiologists. This R naught value, and this is a number, and it represents how many people one infected person will infect. So if your R naught is 1, for example, this kind of means like a steady state. If it's less than 1, then that means that the virus is never going to be able to grow out of control because there's less than 1 person that each person can subsequently infect. This is greater than 1. Then we're talking viral business, okay? You can imagine, just by drawing a really simple picture, that the larger the number on this side, the worse for the thing that the virus is infecting, and in this case, it's humans. So there have been many estimates of what this number is. From I've seen 2 point something to all the way up to 7. But I don't put a lot of weight on this. I like looking at numbers this way, but these are related, of course. And just to follow through with this line of thinking, if you have an infected person, what they're saying now is for every one person within a population of a certain size, a certain number of people are going to be infected. I should have double checked this before I started, but just as an example, if you have population people like this, each one of these little tiny dots represents a person, and this is your sick person. And for every sick person, if you are or not, if the number of people that this person is able to infect is, let's just go with 3, because it's kind of like an average. It's the CDC and the WHO are saying that it's lower than that, but let's just say it's 3, okay? So this. And this is literal, it's proximity based. So this guy is going to infect 3 more people, okay? And if you want to keep extending this, 3. This person, 3. And this is on a temporal scale that's going to depend on when these people meet these people. It's also going to depend on whether or not these infected people are shedding. This is another hot question for debate. I'm sorry if I'm jumping, but there's a lot to cover. Many people are coming up positive for this virus without showing symptoms. So the claim is that for many, many days, maybe even longer than many days, maybe weeks, you can be asymptomatic and carrying this virus, which means that you can potentially spread it to others. I am of the opinion that you are shedding the most virus when you are symptomatic, when you're sneezing, when you're coughing, when you're it literally means when you have the highest amount of virus in your body, when your viral burden, we call it, is the highest. That's when you're going to be shedding the most virus naturally, because there's more to shed. So these 3 for each person is going to depend on a number of things, but you get the math, right? In a very short amount of time, this whole thing will be just infected people. And that's kind of what exponential growth looks like as well. So it's slow in the beginning. You have an infected person, it's related. Anyway, so okay, here we're getting cat bombed again. Oh no! Clammy boy has to contribute to the conversation. So I think I'm going to continue when his ass isn't in the face. Okay, now that we have our kitty nestled in our lap. He's my helper. He's my helper. He is. Yardy. So, so we're talking about exponential growth of the virus, which seems to be the path that this thing has taken so far, growth-wise. So what I wanted to get into was, I want to talk about 2 things, the isolation thing and why it's important. And I also want to stress a very important point now about data. So we have access to data from many sources, and many people are focusing on reported cases. I I would go as far to say as that is a dangerous number to look at, because the number of actual infected cases is not a reflection of the reported cases. There's a lab that's claiming it's 50 times what we're seeing. Some are saying 10. In any case, it's a lot higher than what we're calling reported cases. And the reason why this is important is because when you do estimates, when you do the actual math, when you're talking about exponential growth, if you start with 100 people infected reported cases, and it's even twice that, like that's a really big underestimate, then you're talking about a real number of infected people being 20. Now imagine this was 50, like has been estimated by one lab. That would mean a difference between 100 and 5,000? That's a big difference. And when you start, when you plug those numbers in to a toaster, to an exponential growth equation, in a very few number of steps, like 2 or 3 steps, you are going to see a huge difference in the bottom line number. There is a really good review on this, or it's not a review, it's more like a blog post that I can give you a source to. Anyway, it's very, very important to understand that when you see a number like 100 infected cases, reported cases, you should think way bigger numbers in actuality. And the reason you should do that is because this thing is literally everywhere. It's been disseminating for months, probably. Somehow, it got into just about every place that exists. And no one is safe. You cannot assume that it's not going to come to where you live, because if you do that, you're going to be making a grave error in judgment, and your actions will probably not reflect what you should be doing. It's already where you live. I can guarantee you that 100%. That's why being aware of the real numbers, the actual numbers, will motivate you to just assume that every single person, everyone is infected, okay? Everyone is shedding. That's what you should do right now. This isn't true. But if you make this assumption and you act accordingly, you can also pretend that you have it and you're trying, or maybe you do. No, we don't know if we're asymptomatic. And act as though you don't want to get anyone else sick. This is what we all have to do as a herd right now. That's why they call it herd immunity. We will not accomplish this if we don't do it together. If you know people who are not taking this seriously, and I have very personal experience with this, just try every tactic in the book. Try ones you wouldn't even think about using. I know a lot of our parents are being kind of cavalier about this, but just try everything. Show them this video. I don't know. It's not like anyone's going to listen to me, but I'm right. It's very, very important, and I'm seeing this actually as a very positive thing, because I find a lot of people make a lot of bad decisions in life in general because they don't think they matter. They're grinding through life, kind of asleep. And I'm not going to get philosophical here, but it's very, very important that people really acknowledge how important they are as individuals right now. Really, you matter. What you're going to do today, what you're going to do tomorrow, and the effect that you have on the group of people that you're in contact with, it's going to matter right now. In a month or two or whatever. If we get past this, quote unquote, which is a big if, it's only going to be because of the measures we're taking now to isolate ourselves and to be responsible for our herd. And if you're going to start hearing people say, "Oh, that was no big deal," well, not the Italians, not the Chinese, not the Europeans, not the Americans, not God knows probably everyone, but if there is a group of people who was saved, was salvaged, the healthcare burden, for example, then all I can say is the mathematicians and the epidemiologists will just look at each other and go, okay, because it will be because of what we did, and for no other reason. If you're only concerned about the economy, you're not so concerned about people, you can be motivated by this, because if we can flatten the curve, and I can go into what that means as well now, and we can prevent the burdening of the healthcare system, hospitals, if we can prevent deaths, if we can prevent very bad illness, then we have a chance to recover and even maybe get back to some sense of normalcy. I don't think that's going to happen, but the only way it could happen is if we stop this now. So if you're interested in our economy having a chance of bouncing back, the way to help ensure that happens is to isolate yourself right now. Assume everyone's infected. It's not going to be long. And this length of time, is going to be directly proportional to the number of people who adhere. That's another good reason to get everyone you know in on this, because the more people we get on board, the shorter the amount of time we're shut down. It's just simple, like math. I'm starting to get all, ugh. What do you say? Oh. Mommy, I don't care. Just scratch my cheeks. Yeah, just like that. Ooh. 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 All right, more about flattening the curve soon. Okay, in reference to this flattening the curve thing, I'm just going to leave this here for you to play with. Someone named Allison Hill built a really, really cool online simulator app. And you can plug in different numbers, and I find that this is an excellent way to gain understanding. So you have your baseline, your intervention scenarios, available hospital beds as well, and you can plug in your own R0, your own like baseline R0 or intervention R0, whatever, and you can find that at https alhill.shinyapps.io COVID-19 blah blah blah. Anyway, you can find it yourself. I don't really want to say anything more about that, because this flattening the curve thing it's not my concept, and I've already said what's important to do. We need to isolate ourselves. Now, where would I want to lead into from that? Well, she's getting dark and spooky now, folks. So one more thing I want to say. It's the same but different. A friend of mine asked, what's a good amount of space, physical space, to have in between you and someone when you go outside for a walk? Israel's recommended distance is 2 meters, and this is logical sense, because unless someone sneezes right on your face, it's a far enough distance away from someone to kind of be pretty sure they're not gonna be a source of infection for you. If somebody sneezes on your face, the first thing you should do is punch them, and you will get infected. There's no way around that, unless you're wearing the appropriate mask that filters out less than 0.3 microns. But anyway, so it's 2 meters. If you don't know what meters are, I think that's like 6 feet, something like that. I've been going on walks every day. I'm not changing my routine. And I'm keeping 2 meters away from anyone on either side of me. And another thing that I'm doing is I'm staying upwind. And I'm quite serious about this. If you're walking behind someone and you're like really far behind them, even 100 meters, and they sneeze, and you're in a line with them, and the wind is passing by you in the right direction, that's going to hit your face. I don't know if you people have seen the sneeze videos, like the slow-mo video of the spray. It's pretty gross. Those things travel real far. So maybe it's going a little bit too far, but that's what I'm doing. If you've been with your family in your house for like more than a week, like say more than 5 days, sorry, and all of you feel fine, you're probably all okay. So there's no reason for all of you to stay 2 meters apart. We have to use common sense here. And dare I say, we also have to use intuition. I think that's important. Like I'm in my space with my cat and my partner, and it's been about, I don't know, it's been more than a week, like 7 days since one of us was with some other people, and we both feel okay. But that's not saying anything, because we could still be carriers. We could have both, passed through, our symptomatic phase, but it was just not symptomatic. Who knows? So that's why I said previously, just assume you're a carrier and stay away from others for now. That's all I'm going to say. Hand washing, I'm just going to leave on this. This is also part of your distancing thing and hygiene. Just bar soap, 20 seconds, get in between the fingers, on the backs of your hands. Don't use your bloody phones after washing your hands without washing the phone. And by washing the phone, I mean putting it in the toilet and flushing it away. I'm just kidding. But you need to you need to keep your phone clean anyway, even when there isn't a pandemic. I mean, those things are so Fausty. Watch some videos on bacterial smears and stuff from phone surfaces. Hand sanitizer, it's okay for, like, if you're in a bind and you have nothing else and you're on the move, which you shouldn't be right now anyway, it will probably be sort of effective, but there's nothing like bar soap. You need these lipophiles, which are little, fat molecules that bind and take things away, and they also disrupt membranes. That's another video, I think. But for now, it's getting dark. We're going to shut it down for the night. Bye! Stay safe.